I'm sure when you hear the word addiction, it brings up a lot for many of you. Whether you are somebody who suffers from it yourself or you know somebody that does. Addiction is something that is around us every day, and it affects our lives in ways that we may not even realize. The general addiction statistics in the US provides information that as of 2020, over 37 million people 12 years and older used illicit drugs. More than 25% of those illicit drug users suffer drug dependency or addiction. It is through my experience, time in treatment, and research that I realized that addiction is something that everybody on this earth may face in some form or another. Whether it be drugs, sex, alcohol, gambling, food, sugar, coffee, social media, or our own cell phones. We all may fall into addictive behavioral patterns that may not serve us. My addiction was to alcohol and people-pleasing. I had no idea that I grew up in a family of addiction where there was repeated generational issues. Nor would I have ever thought that I would become addicted to alcohol, and that is exactly what happened. Growing up, I was constantly physically and emotionally abused by a family member. And after years of this happening, I believed all of the ugly things that were being said to me. I lacked self-worth. I felt ugly. I was sad, depressed. I devalued myself, and I was lonely. So I created a version of myself that I thought everybody would like. I became a people pleaser, a chameleon, and I let others control my life. Eventually, I lost myself, and I didn't even know who I was. And not knowing what to do with my fear and my trauma, I turned to alcohol to numb my pain. Initially, it did give me relief, and it made me happy. But when that high wore off, the pain that I was trying to numb only grew stronger. The biggest challenge that I had to overcome is how drinking is normalized in our everyday lives. We are exposed to it everywhere, and it is offered to us no matter where we go or what we do. An example of this is, I belong to the wine mom culture, where we wear all the brand name clothing and have all of the products to go along with our lifestyle. For us, drinking all the time was the fun and the cool thing to do. But as for looking at society, we can see that alcohol is accessible almost everywhere we go. Spas, hair salons, sporting events, public recreational facilities, and even our kiddos' soccer games. And just about every woman's event I knew was offering alcohol as a selling feature just to increase attendance. Examples: yoga and wine, paint and sip, shop and sip, eat and sip, walk and sip, and even haircuts and sip. It seems like everywhere we go, we need to be sipping on something. And I am not saying attending these events should be frowned on. And I get that there are plenty of people out there who can handle themselves in this environment. But what I am highlighting is how the social norms have made it challenging for people to see where they may be suffering from an addiction. Because society has now normalized these events within our minds. Thankfully, I got so sick and tired of my life being a mess that I got the courage to dig to the root of what was driving my addictive behavioral pattern. I went to a counselor, started journaling, reading books on sobriety and personal growth, and I even hired life coaches to help support me. And yes, eventually I did quit drinking, and I found true freedom that I longed for my entire life. Reflecting on my journey, I could see that my addiction to alcohol and people-pleasing was absolutely no different than those obsessed with gossiping, or uncontrollably stuck to those video game controllers. The common denominator between all of these methods is the behavior used. because we do not want to feel whatever it is that is going on within us. So we hide and we numb the sadness, rejection, the boredom, and the loneliness. And we do that through social media, substance abuse, television, and working unhealthy amounts of hours. And by doing so, that makes us feel better. But when that high wears off and we realize that the pain that we were trying to numb only comes back, we realize that the substance that we are now addicted to is not serving us, which causes regret, which is an emotion that we don't want to feel, which causes us pain. So we end up going back to that substance again. And the cycle continues, and on we go. That was the cycle I was stuck in for years. That is the cycle that ruins marriages, wrecks relationships, causes health issues, and can cost others their lives. The bad news is the cycle of addiction is extremely destructive. But the good news is with this cycle and one fundamental little shift, it can be used for our own good. You see, instead of using unhealthy behaviors and substances that only make us feel better temporarily, only to produce regret, which causes us shame, which causes an emotion that we don't want to feel, and we start that cycle over and over and over again. We can feel that pain that we don't want. And right before, and I mean right before, we scroll, or we drink, or we grab that double-decker sandwich, we can pause. Take a deep breath. And then we can get curious about what it is about those actions that we don't like. That is what my counselor, journaling, reading, and my life coaches gave me the opportunity to do. This is where I could get curious about Shannan. Shannan, why do you drink every time you feel shame? Shannan, why do you go to the bar every time you feel lonely? And Shannan, why do you drink at every occasion and act like a wild woman just to fit in with those wine mums? Shannan, why can't you be the sober you and loving yourself for who you really are? Once I got curious, it was easy for me to see it was because of the abuse that I had encountered, the shame that I felt, and the low self-esteem that I had within. That level of awareness allowed me to become the person that I am today. That level of awareness allowed me to take action so I could look in the mirror and I could say to myself daily, Shannan, you are loved. That level of awareness allowed me to forgive my family members that belittled me, abused me, and put me down. And as time went on and I continued with my action over and over, I started to become better. I became more confident, more loving, and a more compassionate human being. And that is how I ended my cycle of addiction. And I went into what I call the cycle of growth. You see, the cycle of addiction makes you feel better, but the cycle of growth empowers you to become better. And I wonder what would happen if by sharing this idea and considering it for ourselves every time we had emotions that made us feel uncomfortable. And what if, instead of working unhealthy amounts of hours every time we are lonely, that we got curious and took action as to ways to make us feel better? And what if, instead of eating pounds of ice cream every time we had a devastating breakup, that we got curious to take actions to loving ourselves instead of desperately seeking it from others? And what if college students got curious as to why they feel the need to be intoxicated to have a good time, but instead to practice having a blast and being their true, authentic, sober selves. I think the results would be amazing. And similar to my experiences, there would be more personal growth and less destructive behavior. Addiction of any type is a serious matter. And the idea of curiosity is not meant to oversimplify the complex issues that may require professional support. There is no right way to recover from drug and substance addiction, nor is there a proper method to heal from addictive behavior. Explore the method that is best and recommended for you. For me, the awakening to the power of curiosity absolutely changed my life, and I experienced both the destruction of the cycle of addiction as well as the cycle of growth. Still to this day, I experience unpleasant and uncomfortable emotions from my childhood trauma, and I do not believe that some of that pain will ever completely go away. But what I do know is that my wounds are now scars, and I am able to help others to heal into their best self. Life is a journey, and by understanding these two cycles, it will change the lives of those that have an addiction and are willing to get curious. What words come to mind when you hear addiction? Sadness, loneliness, isolation, anxiety, depression, dirty, fighting, negativity, and low vibration. Sadly, this has become a part of our lives in so many ways. Now think of the cycle of growth. There is love, there is hope, there is new beginnings, there is positivity, and there is freedom to all possibilities. I no longer run from my pain, nor do I numb it, or run from it, or hide from it. My first instinct is curiosity, which starts the domino effect into the growth cycle time and time again. I ask each and every one of you that knows somebody with an addiction to reach out to them and ask them questions with love, patience, and understanding. Where do you go to when you have emotions that make you feel uncomfortable? And ask yourself if you have not created your own addictive behavioral patterns that in a way keep you from really figuring out what's going on within. Hire a counselor. Seek help. Read articles. But most of all, get curious, because it is within that curiosity that you will find a new way to live and a better way to feel better and to go on with your life and be the person that you are meant to be time and time again. Thank you.